True peace, true peace. Happy Holy Day, peacemakers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are live in 5. Hope everyone's enjoying their holy day. Happy Friday. True peace, peace, true peace. First thing first, I want to give all honors to the divine creators. Honor with Allah, Elohim, El Kagom. I want to give honors to the prophet, Atra Ali. I want to give honors to those that came before the prophet, such as Honorable Marcus Garvey, Deuce Ali, etc. I want to give honors to those that came after the prophet, such as Elijah Muhammad, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and many, many others, including the master teacher, Dr. Malachi Yoel, who came after Prophet Atra Ali. I want to give honors to everyone who will be here in participation with me tonight as we go through our message for tonight's Cooper. I want to give honors to all things indigenous, all things Moorish. And we're going to get right into it. True peace, true peace. Welcome to Branch Temple number 24 of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We are a global branch temple of the Moorish Science Temple of America, where we teach our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may learn to love instead of hate. Come link yourself with the family of nations by joining us here every Friday in Telegram as we go live for our Holy Day sermons and gathering. So we're going to jump right into our divine supplication. Get us started for this week. So as y'all know, we begin our prayers and thinking by using the name of the All, by using the All. O Heavenly One, the Most High, who is sustainer of all worlds, we do accept the duty you have laid on us to clean up the filth made by the world and its non-submitting fools. O my sustainer, we beseech you to keep your hand over us, to control the strings of the courses of our lives. Our sustainer, and if we do wrong, please show our divine blessings of forgiveness on us. You are the only one that can raise us true followers of the news bearers, and in thy name we carry on. All right, y'all. So we're going to open up next with our family guide and our 19 affirmations, which you should be going over these affirmations with you and your family during the week, because these affirmations are real important. Real important for you to affirm, not just with yourself, but your family and your spirit guides. So we're going to jump right into it. These affirmations are called What We Accept as Fact, the daily affirmation of loyalty of the children of the Elohim. And as it states, we accept as fact the eternal laws of nature as revealed through science, past events, logic, and common sense, revealed as right knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. We accept as fact the highest laws of nature is the cooperation and harmony of all living things. We accept this fact our way of life as a means to the best end. We accept this fact that loyalty is the greatest of all honors and treason is the worst of all crimes. We accept this fact that what is good for the Holy Tabernacle is the highest virtue, and what is bad for the Holy Tabernacle is the ultimate evil. We accept this fact that the Holy Tabernacle is the finest and noblest organization for all humanity, created by circumstances, and the ancient and mystic order of Melchizedek is the noblest of fraternities on and above this planet. We accept this fact that creativity, love, and cooperation are the essence of success. We accept this fact that truth and facts are always and has always been the originator and creator of all success. We accept this fact that all worthwhile cultures and civilizations came about from the ancient Sumerians and Kamite Egyptians and the Anunnaki, or Elohims from the heavens, without which there would be none. We accept this fact that for the Holy Tabernacle to survive, expand, and advance, we need, first of all, a revolution of values and thoughts, which must start within each person by being truthful with themselves and about themselves. Therefore, we completely and categorically reject all myths, fictions, religions, and lies that have not been proven. That would include your heavens, your hells, your hellfire and brimstones, your horn and pitchfork devils, your winged angels, and your old man God character sitting on a throne up there somewhere. We deal strictly with facts. If you can't prove it, we don't want to hear it. That doesn't mean we won't listen to you. Just don't expect us to accept your beliefs by virtue of a title such as Reverend, Pastor, Deacon, Imam, Sheik, Rabbi, Minister, Theologian, etc. That is your sensationalism, and we deal with just the facts. We accept this fact that the only true revolution is a war of good against evil, right against wrong, fairness against unfairness, loyalty against disloyalty, sincerity against insincerity, honesty against dishonesty. And this war is fought within each person among the agreeable and disagreeable Elohims that make up your willpower. We accept this fact that the unity of our community and its success will only happen with cooperation. We're all involved. We accept this fact that the total unification of all humanity on the basis of truth, that is, accepting people and races for who and what they are, respecting their culture, their languages, and their beliefs, and expect the same. We accept this fact that the human race's biological and cultural heritage is now under attack by our own morals, our self-righteousness, our desire to control industry, and these things attack the very existence of humanity. We accept this fact that males as well as females are equal in all things and should be dealt with as partners in all matters. We accept this fact that no one race of people is better than the other. In fact, no one wins the race in racism. We accept this fact that communication between different people is the cure to the ignorance that breeds the disease hate. We accept this fact that a good and well-rounded education could prevent most of the ignorance that plagues the world. We accept this fact that the all is just that, the all. You can't take from the all, you can't add to the all. We are all within the all as one. That is our concept of what you call a deity. To the fulfillment of these facts, we children of the Elohim forever pledge our lives, our sacred honor, and our spiritual zeal. True peace. True peace. All right, so all rise. Y'all know how we do. 5 fingers up, 2 fingers up, facing the east. Feet at a 45-degree angle. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through His holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. All right, so we're going to get into these bylaws. We're going to go over our divine constitution bylaws. And as it states, Act 1, the Grand Sheik and the chairman of the Moorish Science Temple of America is empowered to make law and enforce laws with the assistance of the Prophet and the Grand Body of the Moorish Science Temple of America. The assistant Grand Sheik is to assist the Grand Sheik in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And it is known before the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Act 2. All meetings are to be open and closed promptly according to the Circle 7. And love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Friday is our holy day of rest because on a Friday the first man was formed in flesh, and on a Friday the first man departed out of flesh and ascended unto his Father God Allah. For that cause, Friday is the holy day for all Muslims all over the world. Act 3. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be proclaimed and practiced by all members of the Moorish Science Temple of America. No members to put in danger or accuse falsely his brother or sister on any occasion at all that may harm his brother or sister, because Allah is love. Act 4. All members must preserve these holy and divine laws, and all members must obey the laws of the government, because by being a Moorish American, you are part and parcel of the government and must live the life accordingly. Act 5. This organization of the Moorish Science Temple of America is not to cause any confusion or to overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but to obey hereby. Act 6. With us, all members must proclaim their nationality, and we're teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, color folks, black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live and the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained Noble Drew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. Act 7. All members must promptly attend their meeting and become a part and parcel of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become part of the uplifting of humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his father, God Allah. All right, y'all. So let's jump right into our weekly readings for this week. Every week we kick it off here with chapter 25, called A Holy Covenant of the Asiatic Nation, as well as chapter 47 and 48. And as I state here every week, chapter 25 is a precursor for all actions, intents, and behaviors for all Moorish people. This is a chapter that you want to really lock in to your understanding, your understanding. And as it reads, we're going to jump right in. It states, "Ye are the children of one father, provided for by his care, and the breast of one mother had given you suck. Let the bonds of affection therefore unite thee with thy brothers, that peace and happiness may dwell in thy father's house. And when ye separate in the world, remember the relation that bindeth you to love and unity, and prefer not a stranger before thy own blood. If thy brothers in adversity, assist them. If thy sisters in trouble, forsake her not. So shall the fortunes of thy father contribute to the support of his whole race. His care be continued to you all in your love to each other." Simple and plain. Just love one another. Love each other. Love your people. Love your people. It's just that simple and that plain. So we're going to jump right on into chapter 47 and 48. Chapter 47 is called Egypt, the Capital Empire of the Dominion of Africa. And as it reads, "The inhabitants of Africa are the descendants of the ancient Canaanites from the land of Canaan. Old man Cush and his family are the first inhabitants of Africa who came from the land of Canaan. His father Ham and his family were second. Then came the word Ethiopia, which means the demarcation line of the dominion of Amexem, the first true and divine name of Africa. The dividing of the land between the father and the son, the dominion of Cush, northeast and southeast Africa, and northwest and southwest was his father's dominion of Africa. In later years, many of their brethren from Asia and the Holy Lands joined them. The Moabites from the land of Moab, who received permission from the pharaohs of Egypt to settle and inhabit northwest Africa, they were the founders and all the true possessors of the present Moroccan Empire, with their Canaanite, Hittite, and Amorite brethren, who sojourned from the land of Canaan seeking new homes. Their dominion and inhabitation extended from northeast and southwest Africa across Great Atlantis, even unto the present North, South, and Central America, and also Mexico and the Atlantis Islands, before the great earthquake which caused the Great Atlantic Ocean. The river Nile was dredged and made by the ancient pharaohs of Egypt in order to trade with the surrounding kingdoms. Also, the Niger River was dredged by the great pharaoh of Egypt in those ancient days for trade, and it extends eastward from the river Nile westward across the Great Atlantic. It was used for trade and transportation. According to all true and divine records of the human race, there is no Negro, black, or colored race attached to the human family, because all the inhabitants of Africa were and are of the human race, descendants of the ancient Canaanite nation from the Holy Land of Canaan. What your ancient forefathers were, you are today without doubt or contradiction. There's no one who is able to change man from the descendant nature of his forefathers, unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator Allah himself. These holy and divine laws are from the prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the uniting of the Moorish Science Temple of America. These laws are to be strictly preserved by the members of all the temples of the Moorish Science Temple of America, that they will learn to open their meeting and guide it according to the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Every subordinate temple of the Grand Major Temple is to form under the covenant of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and to create their own laws and customs in conjunction with the laws of the Holy Prophet and the Grand Temple. I, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, was sent by the great God Allah to warn all Asiatics of America to repent from their sinful ways before that great and awful day that is sure to come. The time is come when every nation must worship under its own vine and fig tree, and every tongue must confess its own. Through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that they honored not the creed and principles of their forefathers. That is why the nationality of the Moors was taken away from them in 1774, and the word Negro, black, and colored was given to the Asiatics of America, who were of Moorish descent, because they honored not the principles of their mother and father, and strayed after the gods of Europe, of whom they knew nothing. And And in this day and time, this has become a very delicate situation, very delicate situation. And as important as it is pushed to the side far as its real importance, because what we're dealing with is a world of conformity now to make it in life, this society. So to not be exiled from that society or marked as a degenerate of this society, a lot of people just go with the flow, the imperialistic control within the society. And although we have many popular genres of living lifestyles, none of them seem to mention anything about indigenous people and their way of life. Anything too indigenous or overly indigenous is considered too complex or too cultish for the average everyday person to understand, especially here in America. So it's important that we tap into our own vine and fig tree, our roots. With that, we're going to jump into chapter 48, called The End of Time and the Fulfilling of the Prophecies. And as it reads, the last prophet in these days is Noble Ali, who was prepared divinely in due time by Allah to redeem men from their sinful ways and to warn them of the great wrath which is sure to come upon the earth. John the Baptist was the forerunner of Jesus in those days, to warn and stir up the nation and prepare them to receive the divine creed, which is to be taught by Jesus. In these modern days, there came a forerunner of Jesus who was divinely prepared by the great God Allah, and his name is Marcus Garvey, who did teach and warn the nations of the earth to prepare to meet the coming prophet, who was to bring the true and divine creed of Islam, and his name is Noble Ali, who was prepared and sent to this earth by Allah to teach the old-time religion and the everlasting gospel to the sons of man, that every nation shall and must worship under their own vine and fig tree, and return to their own and be one with their Father God Allah. The Moorish Temple of America is a lawfully chartered and incorporated organization. Any subordinate temple that desires to receive a charter, the Prophet has them to issue to every state throughout the United States, etc., that the world may hear and know the truth, that among the descendants of Africa there is still much wisdom to be learned in these days for the redemption of the sons of man under love, true peace, freedom, and justice. We, as a clean and pure nation descended from the inhabitants of Africa, do not desire to amalgamate or marry into the families of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, neither serve the gods of their religion, because our forefathers are the true and divine founders of the first religious creed for the redemption and salvation of mankind on earth. Therefore, we are returning the church and Christianity back to the European nations as it was prepared by their forefathers for their earthly salvation, while we, the Moorish Americans, are returning to Islam, which was founded by our forefathers for our earthly and divine salvation. The covenant of the great God Allah: honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be longer upon the earthland, which the Lord thy God Allah had given thee. Come, all ye Asiatics of America, and hear the truth about your nationality and birthrights, because you're not Negroes. Learn of your forefathers' ancient and divine creed, that you will learn to love instead of hate. We're trying to uplift fallen humanity. Come and link yourself with the family of nations. We honor all true and divine prophets. Islam. So we're going to jump right on into setting the record straight, y'all. True peace. True peace. Like I said, I hope y'all are enjoying y'all holy day, y'all Friday. We're going to get right into the message for this week. We're going to get right into the message this week. So last week we left off on talking about the Olmecs and who they are and where they come from. And And for the most part, we tackled portion of the controversy behind the ancient Americans and who they are, and who was here first. What's up, King? And who they are, who was here first. We touched grounds on that. So next, that leaves us to kind of get into a bit more about who the Olmec people are. So we're gonna continue from where we left off last week and get into setting this record straight from these sacred records. So without a shadow of a doubt, it has already been proven that all peoples across the world originate out of Uganda. That is the so-called out of Africa theory. But we know we're not dealing with a theory per se, because when we're talking about the classification of everyone's African, that's more of a recent thing, and people refer to that when it comes to the Columbus expedition or conquest. And those two concepts really get mixed up. So then a lot of indigenous peoples throw out that scientific discovery where people are originating out of Africa, and they chunk it back into the theory box. It's just a theory. But we know it's scientifically true that all people came out of Uganda, or what's called Kenya, and ancient Ethiopia, and Aksum or Nubia. And so this is where your original Olmecs came from here in America, because the continents were close enough to where you can just walk to and fro, back and forth between South America and Africa. It's just like walking to Walmart. It's a typical, let's hop in the cars, go 15 minutes down the road, we there, okay, cool. Or let's look for a new space to live. I heard they have one on that side of the land. So this is even before there's a term called Africa. Reference point that you can use from the Holy Qur'an Circle 7 is that this is the true and divine name of Africa, going back to Amexem and Aksum. So that's one of the reference points that you can look into. And then, of course, there's more on top of what Noble Drew Ali said. For us, it's just the basis for you to understand the point that's being made and what it is that you're looking for is like a guiding post for what it is that you're looking for. So we know that the ancient Ugandans traveled and became the Olmecs, these woolly head, etherical beings from Uganda traveled and became what they call Olmecs. Now we can get into the potency level of these beings and things like that, but that's not necessarily the point. But we know that these are etherical beings. We know that we, as a people, all peoples, have a certain level of potency of etherealness. And we look at that scale from 1 to 9, 9 being the most potent in ethereal being, which also ties into the mysteries behind the number 9. And when you look in the language, most people refer to the word Nubia meaning gold, which is in reference to the gold that was under the feet of those people in ancient Nubia. And it talks about this in Genesis 2:12, where it says, the gold in that land was good. And the word they used was Ahab and not Nub, which is mistaken for the gold. So you have many different words that mean gold. And in this time, we'll be talking about the same dialect that Noah's seed used, that the children of Adam used. So if this is the case, and it states Zahab in the scriptures, then it's talking about something completely different. So you have the different words for gold, like Baswa, Karus, Katam, Sagur, Faz, and Zahur. So if you look at the word Nub, that is the root word for the word Nabi in Arabic, or Nubian, or Nubun. And Nub, like Nubian, is an ancient way of saying Moorish, Nubian. So even if it doesn't directly says the word Moorish, which that word does go back in time a long ways, you can still pick up where that word where the word Moor ends off, and pick up with the word Nub, which still means the same thing. And that's referring to the Moorish people, black and Moorish people, with the kinky, the woolly hair. And this is coming from that Cushite dialect. The Cushite dialect, which includes the Hamathites, the Puthites, the Misraimites, which are the Egyptians. And these are all your descendants of Noah and his children. So this is where it gets real interesting, especially about ancient history and what we talked about last week with ancient Persia and its influences by indigenous peoples there, which was originally set up by the original Nubians that migrated from the Persian Gulf into Sumer and set up those 7 kingdoms, those 7 cities: Tammuz, Salam, Mu, Lemuria, Kodesh, Nippur, and Ashkelon. And then you had a migration that took place. Some stayed, but some migrated west toward Egypt and set up 7 more kingdoms, which were Sapar, Kish, another way of saying Cush, Kuta, Sorupak, Uruk, Isan, and Eridu. And so, as I mentioned, Kish ended up becoming Cush, which is in your Bible, which is in the scripture. And after Noah, Put ended up taking over Libya, Cush ended up taking over Ethiopia and Sudan, and Misraim took over what is called ancient Egypt. They even migrated over here to America and settled in what was known as the land of the frogs, Algonquia. So Algonquia takes you back to the word Gon, which takes you back to the enclosed garden. So America was also a part of the garden, or the outer field of the garden, because you had the garden and then you had the outer field of the garden. Then you had those that were outside those fields. So the Olmecs are just people from the outer fields. And you had two sides to that field, going one way towards India and then another way towards South America. So we just went over the fact that the Olmecs are the original woolly haired people, dark olive skin tone people. And that's another term, as I've mentioned plenty of times, that you all can use if you don't remember. Olive tone. Instead of saying the word black and other terms, we can use olive tone. My olive people, right? These people come from Nubia and Central Africa, as we discussed Uganda and Kenya, the Congo, that portion of Africa. So the name Olmec was given to the Olmecs, or the Nubians, by their children, by their descendants, who was the Aztecs, who are also brown skin, woolly hair, brown skin, yellow seed, and yellow skin, fair, almost down to the fair skin tone of the Aztec people. This is after, of course, this took place years later after they migrated there. So the word Olmec in the Olmec language means the people of the rubber land. But as we discussed, their original name is Nubian or Nubans, from the word Nub. So we get into this issue where most historians say they have no clue, or they do not know the origins of the Olmecs, while other historians claim that the Olmecs existed in America during the pre-Columbian era, which is people such as us, ourselves. We know that the Olmecs was there going back millions of years before Columbus even touched on the land in America, here in America. And is there proof in that? Yeah, it's most definitely proof. Get into your archaeological findings, the calendars. The calendars is one of the most explanational things that you can find. It's self-explanatory. One of the most self-explanatory things that you can find. The calendars give you the juice. This is where you're gonna find the real juice at, is in them calendars. So the reason why the Nubians were called the Olmecs, because they became the dwellers of what is known as the dwellers of the rubber land. And the rubber is found where the original Nubians are from, where the resource was being traded from. And They were called this by the Aztecs because they migrated to America and they brought along with them the rubber trees from where they were from. So they would uproot those trees and plant them here in America. So this is how the Nubians became the Olmecs. And as I stated, I mentioned earlier, the Nubians, they walked over here to America from Africa before those continental drifts that happened. And they became known as the rubber people. And so when the immigrants came over to America, mostly Europeans came over, they seen the Native Americans playing with bouncing balls made of rubber. This is why. So they would take the rubber from the trees. The trees were called caoutchouc, and caoutchouc means a weeping wood, which would have the oozing fluid coming out of the tree, and this fluid was systematically cultivated in the pre-Columbian America, in pre-Columbian era. So when you find it in history about these rubber trees and these rubber balls being used for sports, because that's another thing that may come back up again as we go through these sacred records, is the fact that a lot of these sports have been around for a very long time. And I think we touched on this in the past couple weeks. Is most of these sports, basketball, football, baseball, most of them been around. Most of them came out of ancient Egypt. Most of them were played in their own ancient leagues that they had, that the ancient ones played with different cultures and different people across the world. Same thing is happening today. It happened then. So of course the Europeans would take pieces of this gummy-like material, the rubber, back to Europe, and they tried to duplicate it. They tried to duplicate it with products like shoes, coats, and different capes that came from the Native Americans. They would try to duplicate these things. So this is showing you that we, as Native American people, as we talked about over the banking series, we've had culture, we had trade, we was a part of the dominion that expanded from California all the way to the Indus Kush Valley. So this is why you see so many similarities amongst all indigenous peoples from one side of the planet back to the other. So they were very unsuccessful in trying to duplicate the products that we already had. So of course, later on, this is why a lot of trades and things happen between the indigenous and the aristocratic families that came out of Europe. So eventually, those pieces that they brought back to Europe ended up becoming samples that were put into museums over the next 2 centuries after they discovered them. So you find rubber trees in Central, South America, and mainly in Brazil along the Amazon Valley. And you find natural rubber trees in the Central African countries like Liberia, Nigeria, and Zaire. And in modern days, you have rubber that is produced from a wide variety of plants. And one specifically is called the Hevea brasilinus, which is a tall softwood tree that is native to Brazil. And it also has spices too. Excuse me, not spices, but species. It also has a derivative from other species like the mabea, the manihot, the sapium, the ficus or ficus, and other plants as well. So that the gum is more of a latex. So the rubber is produced from that latex, which is coming from the gum tree, as they refer to it as the gum tree. But it has this latex texture to it. And the original gum trees, these original gum trees, they can only be found in Africa. And they call it Arabic gum. And that comes from a species of plant called acacia, which some people are familiar with. If you drink a lot of superfoods and healthy foods, you put the acacia in your foods. And I think they're also found in other types of berries as well. So you do have that. So you find the finest quality of the acacia in Senegal, which they call it Acacia Senegal, from where this particular latex type gum gets its name from. And now the finer quality of the gum is called Arabic gum. So this is how it ended up receiving the name of Arabic gum, Arabic gum, or Arabic gum. So now you can find the substance in North Africa as well. In these more modern days of time, it's also available there. So another key point to understand is that one of the countries is Mali, also where this gum is found. And this is the country that makes up the Malian kingdom, where Abu Bakr II, also known as Bubakari or Bagari, and Mansa Musa, his brother, ruled before coming over from Africa to America. So this is where those brothers was at. So that's something that's key that you want to make sure you remember. So it is these people that is being referred to. That is being referred to as the Olmec people. The Olmecs. So next we're going to jump into what is the pre-Columbian era. We're going to get into the era before Columbus. What is it? give you some clarity on that. So that way, when you start to do your research, you come across these dates, you know what period of time you're making reference to. Because a lot of things get pointed out or made reference to, and you get mixed up in the era of time when people are either conveying information. A lot of things get mixed up. Last week we discussed that you got to be careful when you listen to people, and then they trying to put the things that happened during the 600s, during the Common Era, and intertwine and intertangle them with things that happened almost hundreds of thousands of years before the Common Era. You got to know what period of time you're in, what era of time we're in. So simply pre-Columbus just means before Columbus. And this is any time period before the 1600s, which covers the time span from 1500 BC, before the Common Era, to 1540, after or during the Common Era. So this era is divided up into three periods, and we touched on this before in one of our old sermons, where we use the records as a reference point on the treaties that we was reading from, those important treaties that pertains to Moors. So we dived into this to really get some reference point. So it's coming back up again, but this time we are reiterating that these are points and eras of time that you should be remembering. So you have the three periods of the era. The first one being the pre-classic, or what they call the formative, which dates from 1500 BC or before the Common Era to 300 AD, after the Common or during the Common Era. The second being the classic or florescent period, which is from 300 AD to 900 AD during the Common Era. And the third is the post-classic, which dates from 900 AD to 1540 AD. So, of course, that leads us into talking about who is Christopher Columbus. Who is Christopher Columbus? So, if we're going to get into him, first you got to understand the meaning of his name first. So, understand that Christopher Columbus was not American or of English descent. So, his name would have not been in English. Let's get that understood first. Originally, his name was Cristoforo Colombo. Cristoforo Colombo, which is in Spanish, and Cristobal Colon in Italian. And he took on the name Christian Columbus in preparation to come to the New World. This is where, if you look at the term, the word, the name, it should put things in a new light for you, especially when you are observing Christianity, because they have the word in the Bible, but that word was not used in the English language to a couple hundred years later. I mean, a couple thousand years later. So how was it being used during the early Greek period when people didn't have any understanding of what that word meant? Or was it another word that's similar or derivative from it, right? So the word Christopher means Christ and for, which means bearer or carrier. So we know the word Christos is the word that they're using here for Christ, Christos. So you have the ecclesiastical version of the word, which is Christophor, which means bearing Christ, which we all know that Christopher Columbus came here to America with the intent of establishing Christianity, converting people to Christianity. One of the very first missions to start converting people in the New World. They considered it the New World. So this is where that time frame of the New World for them began. And so when we touch on these things like Arcturus and not Arcturus, but Tartaria, when we touch on things like Tartaria and all these old buildings, this is what gave them the hope, the drive, the desire for the New World. And that also roots back to what people know as the NWO concept too as well. So when you're looking at what happened in the 1700s, that is completely different than what happened in the 1400s with that. So you have to remember, Adam was reviving a thought that goes all the way back to Babylon, Sumeria, ancient Babylon. This concept goes back to the Babylonian period. And then the mission of Christopher Columbus is them discovering new land outside of the Mediterranean, outside of Africa, outside of the land that has already been discovered. So the word Columbus, as it's found also in the English language, comes from the Latin term columbusi, which means pigeon or dove, which is also used in Christianity as a symbol of peace. Which is actually funny and ironic that we're reading this again, because this past week I've been watching the TV show The Peacemaker, and I think, I'm not sure what the show was called. I think it's called The Peacemaker. Let's see what the show was called. Yeah, it is called The Peacemaker with John Cena. So I've been watching that this past week, which is ironic, like I say. So for them, Christopher Columbus was acting as a Christ figure for them, bringing them into the new world. And if you dive a little deeper, we know that the ship that he had was built with the help of the Moors. He came here to America with the help of Moorish people. All indigenous people here were referred to as Moorish people. So-called colored people. So this gets into who was the first person to come on the land when Columbus came to America. So Columbus, as we just stated, was not the first person to come on the land because there was people already here. The first person to come on the land was a Moor of the ancient shrine of brotherhood that brought him over here, whose name was Petro El Negro, or Negrito, also called Mr. Peter, the Black, the Naga. Petro El Negro was the admiral, or meaning a high commander. He was the head navigator of one of Columbus's ships, which they called the Nina. So there's two things that we want to keep in mind here. The ancient Shriner Brotherhood, the ancient Shriners were the known navigators who charted the seas and the deserts. And the word Nina is coming from the ancient Egyptian word or Sumerian word Nin. And that is the ancient way of saying noble, royalty. Especially for the women, which just like today, most men name their cars after women. Same thing the ancient Egyptians were doing. The crafts, the boats, vehicles that they created were named after women. So you had a Nubian king that was on the shores that greeted Columbus when he came. And you can find that in Columbus logs, in his logs, his actual travel logs. But this is information that they don't want us average people to know about, because that would change the perspective and scope of history and whose lens that we're looking from of viewing history through, especially on a mainstream level. Everything would be looked at way more different because it goes against his story that non-indigenous people discovered America. So the statement that Christopher Columbus discovered America was coined because it said that he led the way for more European explorers to come to the New World, to America. But we know the real truth is that Diego Columbus and Christopher Columbus would have starved. Diego is his family. If it wasn't for Petro El Negro, who fed them. And it was also the same Petro the Negro who was with Columbus when he went to ask Queen Isabella to support the trip for him to come to America. And so when he went on this trip, he had a different combination of 4 types of metals and spears. One was made from gold, silver, another copper, and one from brass. So those spears that they brought over to the queen, this immediately sparked her interest. This ignited her interest. She was definitely interested in the weaponry and indigenous weaponry from America. So after they did all they thinking about it and considering the possibility to gain wealth, Queen Isabella decided to go ahead and support Columbus's trip. So Columbus first landed in the Caribbean islands, the Indies. This is one of the first places he landed. So when he got there, he found people with those same spears. And these are descendants of people from the Mandingo tribe, who were a tribe of Malians. So as you can see, the Malian Empire was big and they did a lot of traveling. Who they traveled many years before Columbus did. So the first tribe that Columbus encountered when he came over here was the Ottawa tribe. This is the first tribe that he met with when he came. So as I stated, Columbus' voyage, it was a religious voyage. It was a religious mission. Columbus was basically operating as a missionary. So he came with the intent to convert the Native Americans to Christianity. And you can clearly see that also if you look at his name, which means to bury or carry Christ. So we know that Columbus was a Catholic Christian. So as we stated, you look at his name, it means bearing Christ. So Columbus sailed to America on behalf of the Roman Catholic Queen Isabella of Spain. She herself also was a mulatto, a Moor. So before Columbus came, the fact is that he had to go around his country begging people to finance his trip. So he had to raise capital. So he went from begging in his country, raising capital in his country, to the King of Portugal, which is where he's actually from. So Columbus is actually from Portugal. So he went and took his idea to the King of Portugal, who ended up actually taking his ideal and did not support him. So he took his ideal and sailed himself. And he attempted to come to America unsuccessfully. So then Columbus went to the Jews, the Sephardim Moors, and asked them. And then he went back and introduced himself to Isabella, who ended up actually financing his trip. So in actuality, America went through an invasion by the Catholic fears, an aristocratic family of Catholics, Roman Catholics, Romans, Europeans. And being that Catholicism is where Christianity originated from, this would make all other forms of Christianity and all other sects of Christianity, it would make them basically cults. But if you look at it, this is why today religions, they don't have to pay taxes, they can become tax exempt, and they are compared to indigenous nations, because religion came here before the government or the statism was set up. So the laws of the state do not apply to them, sort of like a embassy. So a church is basically a sanctuary for its members, its registered members that are a part of that embassy-like structure. So of course they came over, they converted some of the natives and then set up a corporation. So the corporation was set up with the states, or what they call the settlers, that came later. So this corporation was set up amongst the immigrants, because before they came and settled here, you had the White House and the Sultan of Morocco, who was the head of this land during that time. And that also gets into the slave trade and things like that as well. It also gets into that. So if we look at the word corporate, which means to make into a body, which is very similar to the word cooperation, which means an association of persons or businesses that are coming together for an economic benefit. So we know when we see the word corporate, co or com means to come together or jointly, to operate, to come together. And operation, right, which means work. Some type of work is involved. So they came together for whatever the work at hand was. And so you have the corporate government, the state, came together after the religious corporation. So the religious corporation that was created first is treated as an indigenous nation, which came before the religious state and religious corporation, and then the state corporation, the government corporation. So for a lot of people during the early 90s were doing the research, getting into the discovery of how to set up their own tribal nations, and a lot of them were pushing toward that goal. And it's solely because of the facts that we're talking about right now, which is the fact that the religious corporation came first, then the government corporation, the state, and you had the indigenous nations and tribes prior to that. So the states bodies, the states, which include the countries that were set up, the 13 countries, the 13 colonies, those are the states. They became colonies first, and then transferred over into, or transformed over into to states. So we know that, or most of us are familiar with the term church and state are separate. They're separate parties. But we also know that even though they're separate, they still work together. We know that they also work together. So that the fact that they work together, this because when you get married, the priest or the pastor, he passes you on to the state when he makes the statement, the powers invested in me by the state of Nevada, Texas, yada, 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 I now present you as husband and wife. And so the state comes in between you and your spouse. And the same thing also happens in a baptismal ceremony. You get issued a certificate through the state, and then this is why you end up having to fight for custody. And the one who is better off with the state is the one who receives the reward of custody of the children. So that's how you know for a fact that they work together, because when you lose, you ended up getting visitation rights to basically a child you gave birth to. This is your child. So it makes it clear that somewhere along the line, you and your spouse gave your child to the state. So this happens during the marriage ceremony and the baptism. So you can look at it like the state, the government is the malevolent side, and the religion is the benevolent side. And it's also why I iterate that even though you want to function as indigenous nations who have sovereignty and other liberties by being precedent to the religious side and the corporate side, the statism side, you still want to operate on the benevolent side with the religion, because even indigenous nations have a culture a tradition, etc., that they make reference to, which will still be considered their religion, their way of life, however you look at it, which puts the precedence first, but it also allows you to exercise things through the benevolent side of law. So you have religious governments such as the sovereign theocratic government of the Moorish Temple of America, and then you have your tribal nations, which is why we say come link yourself with the family of nations as well. And one of the key things that a lot of Wusabat brothers and sisters, Nubian brothers and sisters, still to this day are missing out on is the fact that the the reformer, Dr. Malachi York L, aligned himself with the Moorish Temple of America. He said, in his own words, as a leader, you have to know how to lead and bring your people to where it is safe. Lead your people to where it is safe, not into a burning house. So the Moorish Temple of America is a lawfully acknowledged sovereign theocratic government body. So it operates from the benevolent side. So a church acts like an embassy or a sanctuary. We established that. It's like a Native American reservation sometimes as well, where they are tax exempt and they don't fall under the same laws as other corporate structures do and other individual types. So for example, if there's a British embassy in America and a British person commits a crime and runs into the embassy, then the state can't do anything to him or her. They would have to wait till that person comes out, or they would have to get permission from the ambassador of the country of that embassy to trail the person into the country. So not too long before, it was the same way with the church. You ran into a church for sanctuary, then no one can touch you, like the Vatican and or the Catholic Church. They are their own country. A church is its own entity, basically, and it does not fall under the state, so they don't have to pay taxes. So this is why a lot of Nubian churches was burnt down, and a lot of the firebombing that happened up in Detroit, a lot of the firebombing that happened in that area, this is why it happened, because the people within those churches, they had tax exempt numbers. They was tax exempt, so they weren't paying any taxes for anything, because everything they did was through the church. So that meant that the state couldn't do anything to them. They was operating under the church, so the state had no control over them. But when the churches were burned down, they had no choice to go back to the state and start paying taxes as an individual, because they were no longer attached to that church building, which is a real heavy thing, because that strategy still to this day is still around. It still exists. It's still around. Now, more of the wealthy use the strategy. It's a classism thing. It's still around. And our people are trying to figure out that same strategy. But we're telling you all the strategy right here, simple and plain. But these are the things you get when you go through those sacred records. And you get the record set straight for you. You're setting the record straight with the sacred records. So it's typical for your good Christian to have a job, mostly which comes from the state. Then he goes and donates to the church. And then at the end of the year, if he's eligible, he receives some money back. So this is all about economics, as we talked about plenty of times. The economic system of this country is set up through the churches. Because if you are a Christian and you believe in God or Jesus, born on Christmas Day, then you celebrate Christmas, which means the buying of gifts, trees, decoration, food, etc. Same thing with Easter. You have to buy candy, bunny rabbits, and colored eggs and things like that. So it all boils down to money, economics. So if you believe in Thanksgiving, you're celebrating this union, this cooperation. You're celebrating the fact that Christopher Columbus the Christian, came over and claimed what wasn't his, and he set up a corporation, and they operated through that corporation. So you also got Valentine's Day, you got Mother's Day, you got Father's Day, Halloween, etc. So this is where the basis of economics come into fruition. And while also everything outside of the original way of life or that mission that Columbus was on and set out to do, everything outside of that, every way of life, every culture outside of that, religion, tradition, philosophy, is considered a cult, especially when you go into the in-depthness of that way of life. So we know that the church and the state are working together, especially when you are only allowed under certain forms of tax exemption. You're only allowed to talk about certain things. You can't talk about everything that you want to talk about, or you would lose your tax exemption. It's a lot of things that you can't do within those guides versus other forms of tax exemptions. So at one point, you had the baptismal card or the baptismal certificate, which was just as powerful as the birth certificate. You can go and get your driver's license with your baptismal papers and other things. So if church and state were separate, how was that possible back in the day, right? Church and state working together, they set this system up. That's how this system was set up in the past. So, as I just said, if you join a religion, a way of life, tradition, whatever, and it doesn't fall under the principles of the original mission from Christopher Columbus, then you end up becoming what's considered as, especially today, a cult. Not a group of fanatics, not a dogmatic fanatic group, or proper terms to call them. You become a cult, which the word cult comes from the word culture. It's just short for the word culture. And you end up having the police or law enforcement come against you. And another religion especially will use that, and other groups of people, other political groups of people as well, will use that they'll basically give you away as food and feed you to the state, the racket of the state. Especially if you get too big, especially if your tradition and your followers, your growth gets way too big than they can handle. So today you find that most churches end up being incorporated through certain tax exemptions forms, but they don't have to pay taxes. So basically, you can look at it you can look at it this way. Religion, especially in this country, is considered an independent people. And every church is basically an embassy. So we want to grasp that point, especially when we talk about us being a sovereign theocratic government, the Moorish Temple of America, H.R. 0689. A lot of people are not familiar with that, and they might tell you something different because they don't want to stand up for their rights. There's a lot of members of the Moorish Temple of America. There's a lot of sects within the Moorish Temple of America that don't even acknowledge the structure of what the prophet was talking about. And then later on comes the reformer, letting us know that if we're looking in that road, in that pathway of indigenous people, then these are the things that we need to take heed to. These are the things that we need to pay attention to, especially when we get into the religious controversies of things. So this is why we're referencing the ancient and divine creed of Islam, not Orthodox Islam. The prophet was talking about the ancient and divine creed. So it may have possibly not have been called Islam. If we're talking about the ancient and divine creed of Islamicism, the ancient and divine creed of submitting to the divine, especially when we get into us being called the Moabites who spoke in Hebrew. So they wasn't using the word Islam. They might have been using the word Hakla, the law, the commandments, the mitzvah. They were following the commandments. Or other people, other tribes of Moors may have been using other terms. Other terms. Now we know they may have been real close because Surik, Arabic, comes from Ashurik, which is one of the sons of Noah, one of those dialects. But we'll continue off from here next week. Continue on into these sacred records. So I want to make sure that we got that. So we're going to jump right into our next segment. Before I do that, we're going to do a quick room reset. Welcome to Branch Temple number 24 of the Moorish Science Temple of America. We are a global branch temple of the Moorish Science Temple of America, where we teach our people their nationality and their divine creed that they may learn to love instead of hate. Come link yourself with the family of nations by joining us here on Telegram every Friday. All right, so currently this week, I'm still in discussion about the school, so that way we could go get our holy instructions back, get access to that as well. And this week I dropped some new content that you guys may want to check out. One is called Cult Busting, the Cult Busters, and another is the New Logical Origins of Nuwabu. So you guys may want to check that out on our YouTube page. And for me this week, I haven't really been looking into much of the media on things that's going on around the world. I know people still clowning Puff Daddy about those, about those issues that are taking place with him. But like I say, for the most part, I haven't really had my head in the media. So we're going to jump right into our weekly readings of El's Holy Qur'an. And I was actually correct last week. We left off on chapter 42, Surah 42 last week. So we're going to pick up from where we left off there. And we're going to continue on from there on chapter 42. We're going to pick up from chapter 42. So the Tasfir reads, Janab promised for those who fear and tremble at the mentioning of the source, questioning by the source, for those who were led astray into error. So we starting out from Ayat 15, Surah 42, chapter 42, and it states, Tell them this, Muhammad, is that better, or the Jannat, garden of eternity, which was promised for the ones who fear and tremble at the mentioning? It will be a reward and destination for them to re-enter the enclosed garden. For them, in it will be that which they please, eternally. They won't be put out again. It is a promise asked about on your Ra, who is sustainer. And that day he will assemble them, and that which they slave for, from besides the source, Allah. So he will say, was it you who caused these, my slaves, to go astray into error? Meaning Adam and Eve, or Hawa and Cain, or did they themselves stray into error from the path? They will say, glory be to you. It was not proper or fit for us that we take from besides you, Allah, from near friends, Iblis, and you provided a temporary provision for them and their forefathers, which is the enclosed garden of the light, Eden, until they forgot the dhikra, remembrance, and they were a kindred of Adamites, uncultivated, leading to nothing. Indeed, they will deny you of that which you all were saying. So you can't be able to avert nor aid, and whosoever from you puts oneself in a state of injustice, we not he, Elohim Anunnaki, will make him taste a great pain. So the next Tasfir states, Muhammad told that some of the ones sent were made as a test for others. Those who don't hope to return to their Rab, they want to see the Holy Ghost of their Rab. They will see the Danir sitting around the throne. And we not he, Elohim Anunnaki, did not send from before you Ahmad, al-Mursalim, the one sent, except if they were to eat food and walk in the markets. They are physical, and we, Elohim Anunnaki, made some of you as a means of testing for others. Do not you all have patience, and your Rab, sustainer, master, is a seer? And those who don't hope for the meeting or the day of resurrection say, why have al-Malaka, the angelic messengers, Elohim Anunnaki, not sent down upon us the Holy Ghost or Etherians? Or why don't we see our Rab? Indeed, they are too big-chested, pouting with pride, like the Satan, the reptilian, about themselves, and they exceed all bounds. The day when they will see the messengers around the throne as the Elohim, Danir, 24 elders, there will be no good news or gospel on that day for the guilty, the blue-eyed reptilians. And they, the Elohim, will say, it's a forbidden barrier that is guarded, meaning an enclosed garden, like Eden. And we not he, Elohim Anunnaki, proceeded unto the works they had done. So we, Anunnaki, rendered it their deeds as scattered, floating dust. All right, so we're gonna get into this next task here, which states, the Ashab of the Jannat shall be in a better dwelling place. The crystal city and the Elohim will descend. The rulership on that day will be to the Rahman. Samael and Al-Shaitan is a traitor to Inosites. So Ayat 24 starts out, states, on that day, the Ashab, companions of Al-Jannat, the garden, shall be in a better dwelling place, in a better place of repose at noon, back, meaning back in the enclosed garden. And on the day when the heavenly skies will crack or vortex open, and the white clouds, the 144,000 come as clouds dressed in white, meaning also symbolic for Nibiru. In Al-Malakat, the angelic messengers, Elohim Anunnaki, who sit around the seat, will be sent down, descending the crystal city with shams. The rulership on that day will be the fact, beyond any doubt, belonging to Al-Rahman, the yielder, who is Allah. And it will be a hard day for the Kafirin, concealers of that which they know to be the facts. And the day when the unjust shall bite on the hands, saying, oh, if only I had taken a path with the Rasul, the one sent. Oh, woe is me, if only I had not taken such a person as a friend. Indeed, he, the wicked, led me astray into error from the reminder, the scriptures. Even after it, the Qur'an had come unto me, Muhammad. And Satan, the reptilian, Shaitan, also called Samael, Nakash, Iblis, Halal, son of Shakar, and Melita, will only be a Kadhulan, traitor for the Inosites. They will turn to the evil one's seed, but he will betray them. And the one sent, Ahmad, also known as Muhammad, said, oh, my Rab, surely my kindred are taking this Quran as something to be forsaken. So we're gonna finish this last portion, and then we're gonna pick up next week with Surah, with Ayat 35. We're gonna continue from there. So this last task states, Elohim made enemies for every news bearer. Concealer of the facts want to know why the Quran was not sent down to Muhammad, pre-collected. Muhammad, there won't come to you any argument you can't answer. So Ayat 31 states, and just like that, we, not I, Elohim Anunnaki, made enemies for every news bearer from the guilty ones. And it is enough that your Rab is your Hadi, calmer, and Nasir, aider. And those who concealed the facts said, why has not the Quran been sent down to him, Muhammad, gathered all at once, pre-collected, so that verily we, not I, Elohim Anunnaki, may strengthen by way of it your Ahmad's heart, and we, not I, Anunnaki, recited it, the Quran, with a system, in a slow, yet well presented, in a regulated tone, over a 23-year period of time, and it was collected into one book after his passing. And they, the oppressors of Al-Islam, shall not bring unto you, Muhammad, any likeness, an argument that you can't answer, except that we, not I, Elohim Anunnaki, have brought to you the facts beyond any doubt, and the best explanation. And those who will be gathered on their faces to Jahannam, purgatory, those shall have an evil place and a straight path into error. So we're going to start off next week with Ayat 35. But as it's basically stating here, this is a progressional thing. They didn't just put some enlightening words together and said, slap this down and said, hey, follow this, Muhammad. They had Muhammad experience the things that he was writing down. They had him experience these things through the channelings. So there's two ways you can definitely look at this, as the fact that we know God Almighty perfect, he doesn't need aiders, he doesn't need helpers, etc. Or you can acknowledge the fact that even Allah is a part of the all, right? And there's limitations to what this advanced or intelligent being could do. Even though he may be powerful within the all, right? And have a powerful position and powerful powers within the all. But even those powers are limited within the all. And so you have these factors of capacities that you would have to take into account. You have the factor of emotions that you would have to take into account. Does God have emotions? If he's smacking people up and doing this and that to people that's not obeying, there's some level of emotional reflection there, right? So looking at it from the fact of God being this all perfect being and not need of anything, he's perfect, he's whole himself. If God came down to this earth, right, in the form of Jesus, then that means all of God would have to come down, or all of heaven would have to come down if God is the heavens, or as he's considered the heaven, or he's in heaven. He's in heaven, which means he's in a certain location. So there's a lot of things that are in the scriptures that will force you to have to contemplate these limitations of the Most High. So this is why we say the true God is the all, the omnipotent, omnipresent, etc. of divine nature. But you also have God in the sense of the divine deity and father of a people as well, an advanced being who is considered to be deity or God. So these are things that you want to take into account, especially when we're going through this and reading these texts. Like we keep making reference to the Anunnaki or the Elohim Anunnaki or Anunnaki Elohim, and they're being described as the angelic beings and forces of God, of nature. So as we see, Columbus came with his mission, right? And the Most High sent the Prophet Muhammad with a mission to set some of the best examples that could be set. And so us just even talking about Columbus is an example that for every prophet, like the Prophet Noble Joe Ali, Yahshua, there's someone that is sent like matter, like antimatter to matter, to oppose them, the antagonist. There's someone that is the antagonist to the protagonist of these divine stories, of these sacred records, or these histories. So this is something that you also want to take account. And we can get deeper into the fact that, everyone used to have twins back in the day, and, get into that. But if you understand the balancement of things and principles, then you understand where we're coming from. So with that, we're going to jump right into the mandatory literature from the prophet. I'm going to take us on home. You want to join us and proclaim your nationality, just show up here on Friday. We'll open it up for you during the current events segment to where you can proclaim your nationality, put it on record, and come get involved. Friday and Sunday is mandatory for us, and we're supposed to end promptly at our respective time. And come join us. Come join us. Come link yourself with the family of nations and join us, especially for Sunday, so we can go over those holy keys and those one-on-ones with you all, so you'll understand how to apply them to your everyday life. And we're still structured as the Global Interdependent School District. We're working on getting that situation fixed with our school system and seeing what's going on. And we will definitely be back next week. So with that, we're gonna jump into our mandatory literature from the prophet, and then we're gonna take it on home. All right, so the prophet wants us to read this in every temple meeting and every temple service. This is a warning to all peacemakers and Muslims. The prophet said, I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. We're for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your card at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be a severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the laws laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they turn in their card and button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Zabuwr Ali, and if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet therefore is sending out the divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. True peace, Zabuwr Ali. All right, y'all. So we're gonna go over this last mandatory message from the prophet, and we're gonna close it out for this week. I hope you all are enjoying your Friday. True peace, Islam. And this is to be proclaimed in every temple meeting and temple service as well. The prophet said, I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There's a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim that I was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me, so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me in the movement will be remembered. That's why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without me, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works, which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet Zabuwr Ali. All right, y'all. So as you can see, the prophet wanted us to come together, put the prophet out front, and this has been done. This has been done. Even those that are of the Wusabat, the Nubians, the Nubians, the Amasis, we put the prophet out front for a reason. Put the prophet out front for a reason, because even before your individual tribal identity, we was Moorish people as a whole, right? So understanding just that principle alone should be enough to want to come out come in and do the work. So with that, we're going to close out with our prayer. All rise, facing the east, feet at a 45-degree angle. 2 fingers up, 5 fingers up. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. All right, y'all. See y'all next week. True peace. Wadu.